get to be around the team for the first time, full speed reps, not just on air, and really competing against each other. So it's a great start, and it's a great learning process for me to get to know these guys and really find out what everybody's made of with this competition.
I woke up feeling dangerous.
I know I'm a good quarterback. I know I can be a good quarterback in this league.
All I want to do is be coached.
Yo, what's up, y'all? This is John from the One Carolina Show. Thank you so much for joining me this evening on a special edition of One Carolina Live, where I'm joined by the longest running Panther podcast out there, the C3 Panther podcast for this quarterback battle royale. Fellas, what's up?
Hello.
What's up, buddy?
How's it going?
What's up?
Man, it's good to see you guys, man. I've been tapped in watching you guys a lot lately. A whole lot going on with this quarterback competition, man, and training camp is underway. It's been great to watch. And so how's everybody doing tonight before we get started?
Y'all want to jump in here?
Cody, come on. You're always the one who won't stop. Ready to fire.
I know,
all right,
man. I'm trying to be
look,
better.
he's trying to be a good boy. He's trying to be a good boy. Thanks for having us
I'm
on,
trying.
John, man. We've been excited to come on. We've been talking about this quarterback discussion for a long time, and we're going to continue to be talking about it. And when Cam Newton left the Carolina Panthers, I said, man, we're going to be talking about the quarterback until we're not.
Right.
You know, I mean, and that's just the way it is. Until we got one, we're looking for one.
Yep, absolutely. CK, how you doing, brother?
Man, just happy to be here talking to you. Glad to see you back on the grind, my friend. You know, at this point in time, it's refreshing to have some things to talk about, and I'm glad to be here again with the normal lads, and then of course you, man. It's been a minute. I'm glad to hear you're back at it again. We appreciate you always being in the chat as well, continuing to support C3 as well. So we were more than happy to be on and helping you out as well.
Absolutely. Cody Lack, what's good?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. What's going on with you, brother, man? Happy to be back here on One Carolina, man. You know we love coming to hang out and talk Panther football with you. Hey, yo, everyone in the chat room, y'all better do just like y'all do over at the C3 Panthers podcast. Hit that like, hit that subscribe, hit that notification bell. Our boy John's going to be putting out incredible content this year, and Panther creators support Panther creators. So
Absolutely.
Get them likes up.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one thing that I can't remiss, man, is that we all support each other. This is a community, you know. Competition is fun. I mean, it's always competitive to do anything that you do in life, man, but ultimately collaboration is the key, you know, and that's what I look forward to more than anything this time around. You know, I took a break just to take care of, you know, mental and physical health, doing a lot better now than I was before and ready to get back at it. So I'm looking forward to collaborate with you guys much more often and all the other creators as well. So
fantastic.
Yes,
and I bet you the Panthers are ready to get back at it. They're feeling better too, I think.
Yes, absolutely. So let's get to it, man. So we're in the middle of this quarterback competition, you know, and I have my thoughts. Cody, I know you got your thoughts, Tony and CK. But I wanted to just go ahead and get it started with question number one. So this is going to be a 3-part thing, and then we just kind of, you know, talk about, you know, in between, you know, other things as well, other topics. Obviously, we see some things going on press conferences today that, you know, everybody's pretty interested in. But to really get it started, let's just ask the first question. Do y'all really think this is a quarterback competition?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. It's a farce. It's in fact, I put a story out on Carolina Cat Chronicles, and it's not even a story. It's just a blurb that this is Baker Mayfield gaining momentum in farcical quarterback competition. I mean, look, is that they're going to make it. I think they're doing it the right way, and that is not just I think it's taking some of the pressure off of Baker Mayfield by not saying, hey, you're our savior. Here you go. You got to do it. But this kind of idea that he's winning the job honestly, and then taking over in that way and becoming a leader of the team. I think that's what it truly means. And my only point on this, if it really was a quarterback competition, how come we haven't seen Sam Darnold behind the mic one time? I haven't seen him. I haven't seen him. I've seen Matt Corral on the mic. I've seen Baker Mayfield on the mic. I've seen Dante Jackson, Robbie Anderson, go down the list of people. Man, Sam Darnold missing in action. And if it really was a competition, they would be giving them equal time in the public, as well as you would hear equal news about him doing well. And we just haven't heard any of that.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So I'll jump in here and say, as normal, in order to find out the truth of things, you basically have to listen to what Matt Rule says and just assume the opposite of what he's saying. He said that there would be an open quarterback competition, and that was never the case. It was never the case. I mean, he's still splitting the 1s and 2s with Baker and Sam. And so, I have no doubt that that was their mindset. But, everybody's following Twitter the same way. Baker Mayfield looks like he has pulled away from the competition. Now, I was excited because I thought Matt Corral would actually get a chance to compete for this starting job. We know he has the gusto to do it. He's been showing up first at practice every single day, first man out on the field. And I love that about him. I think Matt Corral is our future. I think he has an incredible arm, an incredible work ethic. And I thought that maybe he could potentially compete for the starting job, but they were never going to do that. Matt Rule has a real problem playing rookie offensive players and giving them a chance to succeed, to be honest. I think that's one of Matt Rule's bigger flaws. So, yeah, to answer your question directly, there was never a quarterback competition, despite what Matt Rule might tell you.
CK, what say you?
I agree. I don't think there is, but that's part of the reason why I'm a bit frustrated today. And that is that I don't think there was ever a quarterback competition. I think 100% it's been Baker's job from the get-go. And the idea that we are still splitting reps for Sam Darnold in this quote unquote quarterback competition is quite honestly just going to set Baker back a little bit further in getting that chemistry and rapport with his squad. I don't know that it makes sense for us to handle it the way that it is. But I do not believe that this, by all accounts, if it's as close as Matt Rule is saying that it is right now, if he's saying it's as close as it is, and Baker had just come in for the first time and played with these guys, then it's clear that Baker's the winner. Even if they are playing at an even level, it makes way more sense for you to go ahead and say, well, Baker's clearly at the same level as Sam, and Sam had a head start on this offense.
Yeah, and it kind of goes to the fact is that if something is a competition, you have to have kind of competitors who are on a somewhat equal plane.
Yeah.
Kind of the idea of when we say someone says, oh, this is a great rivalry, and the other team goes, you never win. It's actually not a rivalry. It's just a lopsided beating. And in this case is like, was this ever a competition? Maybe the answer to that question isn't between the kind of whether or not they're going to give them equal reps and this equal shot thing. But did Sam Darnold really have a realistic chance of ever winning the job? And what would it take? Think about that. Think about what it would genuinely take for them to have brought in Baker Mayfield for the last 8 months or 6 months or whatever we've heard saying, we got to get better at quarterback. We need to add to this room. We're going to do it through both free agency and the draft. And then imagine if Sam Darnold came out there and actually won it. What a Herculean-like task that would be. He would have to be out there looking like Dan Marino in practice. And he's been – and so was it a competition? Maybe not, because Sam Darnold probably can't compete. And that's and I hate to be bad.
No, you're not.
I feel like we were overly mean to him in some ways, but right now,
I 100% agree with that. Yeah.
But he just seems broke. Like, I mean, this is like, I mean, we haven't heard from him. He hasn't done anything in camp other than just dump it off. And today, from what I heard, the coming out of camp was like Baker won the day again.
Right. Well, and I think that, but to me, the real competition is Sam Darnold versus Sam Darnold, because it's like I think they're trying to find in him, hey, do you have the will to truly compete? Like, would you really take some risks? The one thing that Baker does, like Baker's Brett Favre in a lot of ways, he's going to throw a ton of picks, but he's going to push the ball down the field. We're seeing that a lot during camp. And I think that's one of the biggest differences with Sam, where he checks down a ton. He's been doing it a lot in camp again.
Yep.
And Baker will unlock guys like Terrace Marshall. He'll unlock a Shy Smith. He'll unlock a CJ Sanders, or whatever this wide receiver room is going to look like. And specifically a Robbie who can take the top off of a defense. And we all know that, he can do that. And so we may see the best of a lot of these guys. And I mean, I'm leaving out obviously the X factor in DJ Moore. But it just feels to me like everything has to go perfectly right for Sam Darnold to have any measure of success. And with Baker, it's like, if it's going right, it could be great, but he can potentially make it a little bit better, if that makes sense. And we're seeing that play out. So like, it would take the load off of a Christian McCaffrey. I mean, because Baker, not for nothing, like in Stefanski's offense, especially in 2020, there were a few games where they let Baker rip it. I mean, that Cincinnati game, man, he started off like, I was watching a stat line. He started off like, 0 for 8 or something like that. And then went like 22 for 22, 4 touchdowns. I mean, so the guy's got the potential. And I think he's showing that a lot during camp, like a whole lot during camp.
Yeah, I guess the final question to it would be, and this is where Cody's going to be is upset by it, is like, I mean, could Corral think about what it would take for Corral to win the job? It would, it would take slightly less than Sam Darnold, maybe in some ways, but
right.
It's tough to think that you're going to go out there and what you can show in camp alone could propel you to that point. If you're Sam Darnold and if you are Matt Corral. And I know Cody's made a great point on our show, though, that the preseason is the real only opportunity for Matt Corral to catch that fire and to say, man, like maybe this is special. But I just don't see that, man, Matt Rule betting his life, his job, his future on an unknown entirely, and such a high risk bet. So I think Baker is the guy. I think he's going to be starting from week 1 until he's not.
So let me ask this, because that raises question number 2, because you mentioned something that, and I've heard Cody voice his displeasure, and this is where Cody and I agree and disagree at the same time. Like, I agree that Matt Corral, and question number 2 is, does this competition hurt Matt Corral's development? I'm going to ask you this first, Cody, because I definitely agree with Tony in a lot of ways that I don't see a pathway for Corral to become a starter. But personally, and I'll dig into this a little more, I don't think this hurts his development. I think it's the perfect situation. But Cody, what say you on that?
Well, it's the perfect situation if we're under the assumption that Baker Mayfield is only going to be here for a year or 2. Mm-hmm. But I would pose that question back on to you. What if the Panthers make a deep playoff push this year? Like, what if Baker Mayfield just takes my nose and rubs it into all my hot takes that I have living out there about him on Twitter? And let's say that he just balls out this year and, we go into the playoffs. Well, then it's not looking good for Matt Corral, because there's only going to be one guy to play the quarterback position. And if Baker Mayfield does what you just said, let's say he unlocks Terrace Marshall Jr. And he finds that connection with Robbie Anderson and DJ Moore, all of a sudden people might be like, hey, man, we've got a good thing going on here with Baker. Why would we even want to even consider going to a rookie player, or, by that time, I guess it would be his second year, but a player that has never played a snap of NFL football before? You're still wondering who he is on the football field, and you might not get that opportunity for him. Like, I think everybody kind of looked at San Francisco and what they did with Jimmy Garoppolo and Trey Lance and just figured, oh, yeah, we'll do the same thing. But I feel like Baker does have more upside than Jimmy Garoppolo does. And if he has a good season this year, then no, I'm gonna have to say I don't think that Baker Mayfield, being successful here ultimately is a good thing for Matt Corral, especially knowing who our owner is, David Tepper, and how starved this man is for a season of winning Panthers football. I think if Baker shows promise, they're going to jump on that train full steam ahead.
I could see that happening, but I could also frame up a couple of situations that history have shown us to the reason why I feel like this is the perfect situation for Corral. So if we go back to, let's talk about something micro and macro. So macro, if we go to, let's say, Green Bay, right? And he's drafted, and Baker Mayfield is our version of Brett Favre. Well, Rodgers, in this Hall of Fame career that he's had, one of the best careers any quarterback has ever had, was behind Rodgers for 5 years. You know what I'm saying? So he sat behind him for a very, very long time before he got an opportunity, or excuse me, Rodgers sat behind Favre for 5 years before he got that opportunity. Now, do I think that that's what's going to happen? No. I think his development will be more on the lines of, say, Patrick Mahomes to Alex Smith. I think the reason you bring in a Baker Mayfield is this. I wouldn't want Matt Corral to start this year because, one, expectations on him would be far too high. What do I mean by that? Patrick Mahomes took over a team that was already a playoff team, right? Yep. So if you got a guy like Baker Mayfield that can right the ship here, that can at least get you to a, above 500 record, regardless of whether that turns out to be a playoff berth or not, the fact is that they get to above 500 record. You have more continuity. The team has an identity, understands what they are. And honestly, I think Baker would literally have to win the Super Bowl for this not to eventually be Corral's job, even if Baker re-signs, because Baker's not going to get a max contract unless he throws for 40 some odd touchdowns this year and under 10 picks, right? So it's not a situation, this is just my opinion, where Baker is going to just come in and the Carolina Panthers are going to be his team, like, solidified, because I really do believe they believe in Matt Corral. But like Steve Smith said on the radio in that clip that I heard today, it's probably going to be a year or two before he really, gets things, understands things. Things might process a little slow. And to be honest, he could come out off pure talent alone. We've seen it before. We saw it with Russell Wilson in Seattle. But I also think that they're looking to build more of an infrastructure for him to take over, where it's an easier transition versus him just jumping out there and having to learn it on the fly, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense. And, I think that's what most people are hoping for. I just think that the biggest question in all of Panther Nations is how many games do the Panthers need to win with Baker under center to consider giving him a new contract? I mean, just last year, the 49ers made it to the NFC Championship game, and they were like, nah, we're going to move on from Jimmy G. So I wonder what that benchmark is for Carolina.
I think how you win is going to be important to that too. It's not just the number of wins. So if you go out there and Baker is stinky and you win 9 games, you go, I don't know if this is going to work. If he leads you to 9 wins and he's like clearly a positive contributor, a strong contributor in turning that tide, I think franchise tag is the way to go. To answer the original question, does Baker Mayfield hinder or does this competition maybe hinder Matt Corral's development? I'm going to take the opposite answer of Cody. And I think Baker Mayfield is maybe Matt Corral's savior in a way. And I think this is that if Baker Mayfield didn't come here and you had Sam Darnold out there and we were just bad, and then Corral comes in and you put him in a position that's sort of just difficult and untenable, you're talking about potential regime change next year. You're talking about a completely new coach. You're talking about a high draft pick or a team that has been so thirsty for a quarterback that they're willing to do whatever and trade whatever. So a team that could pull like what the San Francisco 49ers did and trade multiple picks ahead to get into, if you're a number 8 and you want that top 3 pick, you're moving into that lane, and I think that could potentially kind of just throw the baby out with the bathwater for Matt Corral. So the other thing I want to point out too, like when you brought up the Andy Reid, the Chiefs comparison, not only is that team in a really good position, but you're talking about a Hall of Fame coach.
True.
You're talking about the only coach in history that has been to 3 consecutive championship games with 2 different teams. He did it with the Eagles 3 times in a row. He did it with the Chiefs 3 times in a row. And that we do not have in Matt Rule. So there's not really a stability. If you're talking about Corral going in there and having a tough year in a rookie season, or even just a marginally good year, and you're under a coach like a Belichick or a Shanahan, like you pointed to the 49ers. Those are completely different examples because the coach is a figure piece of that institution, while ours is an entirely is a complete risk. So I think this is that for me, the one thing that is hindering Matt Corral's development in this is Sam Darnold. And what I mean by that is if we really think this is Baker's job, it looks like it is going to be, having Matt Corral getting more and more reps to be the kind of focused backup quarterback. Because here's the thing is, Cody, you brought up is like, what happens if Baker sticks around? Well, yeah, you could have that. That might be a good problem to have. Franchise tag, most likely. Crazy season equals an extension. But we're talking what this would give is Corral time to develop and not wait his turn. But sometimes terms are given to you when you're not expecting them. Think of Drew Bledsoe getting knocked out and Tom Brady coming in. Injury. But like, if you don't have that clear pathway, he is not really ready this year to be the backup. If Sam Darnold is getting so many reps in front of him. So I would just like a little clearer depiction of what we think the room should look like. And I think it should be bring in 2 quarterbacks. Baker Mayfield's the starter. Matt Corral's the learning backup. Hopefully we don't got to go to him. But if Baker goes down and Matt Corral is as good as you say, he comes in and lights it up. There you go. That's a good way, a pathway for him. I think Sam Darnold is kind of the problem in his development more than Baker Mayfield.
CK, what do you think on that?
You know, I agree. I don't think that Baker Mayfield being there is going to cause a problem at all. The biggest problem I could see it happening is so here's the part that I think where Cody's argument becomes a bit almost contradictory, right? Baker Mayfield, if he comes out and balls out, well, then great. We have a quarterback in Baker Mayfield, right? That's a win-win, right? Doesn't mean that Matt Corral's not a good quarterback. It just means that Baker Mayfield came in, proved that he could be a franchise guy, and we potentially sign him to a franchise deal, right? Now, if what's true about what Cody believes Baker Mayfield is, well, we don't have to worry about that. Matt Corral will be the quarterback for us next year because we're not going to re-sign him. If Baker Mayfield, this is a win-win for the Panthers, right? One is if Baker Mayfield comes in here and shits the bed, right? We're going to have Matt Rule gone, number one. That's the first and foremost. Second is Baker Mayfield won't be here. And then number 3 is that we're going to have Matt Corral be the guy at that point in time.
Right.
So it's like I said, it's a win-win for pretty much every situation when it comes to this. It's just really the bottom line is whether we believe Baker Mayfield's going to be the guy or not. I don't think that this does anything as far as for the Carolina Panthers for negative in the future. I think it only is positives for us moving forward. But that could mean that Matt Corral isn't the guy, at that point in time.
CK, one of the things that makes me a little nervous is like when you talk about Baker Mayfield not having a good season, I think the two things would correlate. One is that he would have a bad season. 2 is that Matt Rule would likely be fired. And, his loyalists would probably follow. Phil Snow possibly, and, whoever else is on staff that would be loyal to him. I would hope that someone like McAdoo wouldn't take over because we've seen how he can be good as an offensive coordinator, horrible as a head coach, but, sometimes second time's a charm. New York's a very, very tough market. So I'm not going to just completely say that he can't be a good head coach because we've seen Pete Carroll, have a resurgence from coming from the NFL once and then coming back again. But what I will say is this, what does concern me, because I've seen this brought up a couple of times. What concerns me is like Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, Will Levis, and a host of other quarterbacks out there in a potentially heavy quarterback draft. If the Panthers end up with a top 10 pick, does Matt Corral kind of get lost in the shuffle because he didn't have an opportunity to develop last year, and the new regime brings in a guy? And to me, honestly, and I've heard this said before, and I know some people may look at this and be like, man, you're crazy. But I've actually heard some analysts, some real no football analysts, right? Guys that know X's and O's like hardcore, say that Matt Corral was the best prospect that they've seen since Andrew Luck. And I think that there are some comparisons there, but you also have to take into account I had no idea that before knowing who Matt Corral was, that Ole Miss had never had a 10-win season. You think about some of their, historic quarterbacks like Eli and Archie Manning, and like to not have a 10-win season until this guy. I mean, his showing against Alabama last year was ridiculous. His accuracy was above 70%. He only threw I think 8 or 9 picks. 20 touchdowns, but the RPO, really his offensive scheme in college is structured so that you can deal with the guys that are going to be playing on the next level, playing against guys that are going to be bankers with Ole Miss, because you got to get the ball out quickly.
Right.
So we don't really know what Matt Corral truly is. That's what makes it so interesting, is like, when preseason comes up, man, like this guy could go out and absolutely shred a third team defense. And then we're all sitting here looking like, wait a minute, is this a Russell Wilson situation? Like, should this guy really be starting? Because he could make both Baker, Sam, and PJ look pedestrian when he comes out against Washington next weekend. I mean, it could really happen.
Well, that's kind of wild. Isn't that like, Baker did win the Heisman now. You know,
true,
I mean,
true indeed.
You know, it's not like,
with
Sam
John.
Darnold is the one that I could see is the draft darling, that people check all the boxes. He has the arm, he has the size, he has he looks good in a football uniform type thing. But Baker Mayfield has balled. Like, he's literally bald. I mean, in college and the pros. So I'm not saying, Matt Corral didn't win the Heisman, dude. Matt Corral didn't win the Heisman.
See, this is what I wanted to get into. Look at Cody's face. Like, Cody, this is why I told you when I tweeted you, I said, why you are right about Matt Corral and wrong about Baker Mayfield. Go ahead. Because go ahead.
So look, man, if I end up being wrong about Baker, I'll be happy to be wrong. But my thing is this: if you're talking about talent ceilings, I think Matt Corral's is way higher than Baker Mayfield's.
I don't disagree with
and like a lot of people, and you may not, a lot of people really take umbrage with that because, on surface value, they see a third-round quarterback versus a number one overall pick who also won the Heisman. And was, by the way, a Heisman contender the past few years beforehand. But that's missing the forest for the trees. I think Matt Corral has a much better arm. I'm not saying that Baker has a bad arm. I think he's proven he's got some arm talent. But that throwing motion that Matt Corral has, dude, the kid throws laser beams.
I haven't seen anything like it since Marino.
Dude, he has one of the most insane throwing motions that I believe I've personally ever seen. And on top of that, the man can run away from you. Like, he's not just like mobile, like Aaron Rodgers type mobile, like can extend the pocket. No, he can like legit hurt you on the ground. And I feel like when you have a quarterback like that, it opens up your offense in so many different ways that a whole new world is available to you. I mean, look at guys in the playoffs last year, guys like Josh Allen, guys like Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes. Like, these guys can do everything at the very highest of level. And I feel like Matt Corral, he hasn't proven it yet, obviously, but he has the ceiling to be that kind of player. Baker Mayfield, I'm hesitant. I have one season of him producing like a franchise quarterback in 2020 with a good team around him, regardless of what Tony might tell you otherwise.
That's a misnomer, and I got facts to back it, but keep going.
I just think that he had a top 10 offensive line for the 4 years that he was in Cleveland. And I feel like he had two of the better running backs in the NFL. And like now, because Odell Beckham is such a diva, everybody wants to just discredit him and he's injury prone. No, he had some guys up there too, man. Odell Beckham, he had Jarvis Landry. I think David Njoku is a damn good tight end. They just paid him as well. They had Higgins up there. I mean, the man has had a lot of talent around him that he wasn't able to put quite to the next level. I feel like he could do that and then some this year, but I'm just not hopeful that he is somehow going to be some, savior that the Panthers have been looking for. I'm not going to believe it till I see it.
Hang on, Tony, because I seen you coming, but let me just say this, right? Because you talked about Odell, whose production had been down before he got to Baker Mayfield, mind you, who has been injury. I don't like using the word injury prone. Shout out to NLP. They had a really good Nine Lives podcast. Keeb and them had a really good show one time where they had a doctor on that was talking about like NFL injuries and stuff like that. And he said that he doesn't believe in, and I was convinced after hearing that argument that I don't believe in the term injury prone. I believe overused, but not necessarily injury prone. But case in point, what's interesting when people talk about Baker Mayfield's season there, the offensive line, which yes was good, defense was good, but it kind of like started falling off down the stretch. But here's what's interesting: Baker Mayfield in that 11-5 season, where he threw 26 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, right? Had 62% completion percentage. Do you know that he didn't have one single receiver that went over 1,000 yards? Not one. The closest was Jarvis Landry at 840. And Jarvis isn't even a number one. Where Baker is able to be the best version of himself is the same Baker that was the same Cam Newton of 2015. I know we complain a lot about Cam not having receivers. It was the perfect storm because Cam could distribute the ball, run, do whatever he needed to do to orchestrate the offense how he seen fit. It's the same thing they do with Lamar Jackson, which is why number one guys will never go there and why he always loses guys who want to be number one receivers. You have to have a special kind of receiver to play with a quarterback like that, right? Brady's the only one that I've really ever seen that had, and maybe you could say Manning with the two guys that he had in Reggie Wayne and Marvin Harrison. You can maybe even say like Bradshaw, going back to guys like Lynn Swann and, guys like that. But in this modern NFL, guys who do what Baker does, spread the ball around, like to go to the tight end, things like that, they need to have the autonomy to be able to distribute the ball how they see fit in an offense. Right. And what they were doing in Cleveland that made Baker look so unsuccessful was trying to force targets to Odell Beckham, which is why down the stretch they go 6-2 when what happens? Odell gets hurt. And Odell didn't even have, I think Odell finished the season with, 319 yards with an insurmountable amount of targets. Like he had like 43 targets and only caught 23 of them. Right. And so that's all I'm saying. Like I think that in this kind of offense, like here with Baker Mayfield, like this offense with guys who were more selfless, the only guy I was worried about was Robbie. And after seeing what I saw today, my worries are far less than they were. Them two working, after practice, building chemistry. Because everybody else is selfless. DJ Moore, the majority of his yards come after the catch, because he hasn't had a good quarterback. So go ahead.
I just have a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
So again, it takes a team. Baker is not going to win anywhere by himself, right?
True.
It's all about the guys you have around you.
Absolutely.
So when you talk about, not having chemistry with Odell and vice versa, well, at what point do you start to levy some of that blame against him? Again, it's kind of like a, Baker side, Odell side, but famously Odell's father released that video of all those times that Odell was open and Baker either just didn't see him or didn't throw him the football.
But see, Cody, the thing is this. You could say, when do you start to give Baker, some of the blame? But I'll just say this. That clip that I always reference that's viral, when he threw that touchdown, it was either Donovan Peoples-Jones. It wasn't Rashard Higgins. I can't remember who it was, right? But he throws this touchdown. He doesn't even run over to the receiver that he threw the touchdown to celebrate with him. He goes beelining down the sideline, happy that he threw the touchdown, and went immediately over to Jarvis and Odell and put his arms around them and said, hey, be patient with me. Love you guys. Why does he have to say that? Because these guys want targets.
Because Odell has been a crybaby everywhere he's gone. And he loves to be celebrated. He celebrates himself more than anybody. But here I want to go push on a couple of things Cody said.
Go ahead.
Right. He likes to throw some blanket statements out there. He goes, he names all these names. Like he hits us with these supermodel quarterbacks. He's like, this day and age, you need a quarterback can do everything. And he lists Josh Allen. Then he goes to Patrick Mahomes. And he goes to Joe Burrow. And he talks like they can do it. Really, Josh Allen is the only one that technically can do it. I mean, like those other two guys are kind of mobile, but Baker is just as mobile as a Patrick Mahomes. They've all run the same 40
I
times.
disagree with that.
They all run the same 40, 4.8. They all run a 4.8, and Burrow runs a 4.9. So, I mean, if you're just talking about speed and this and that, Mahomes is just, he's sneaky. You know what I'm saying? Like, and that is kind of, so it's not like you're talking about a Josh Allen who has every tool in the toolbox when you're talking about a Burrow or a Patrick Mahomes. And then the other is this whole idea that you said, at what point do we start levying some of the blame on Baker? When you start levying some of the credit on Baker from being drafted to a team that didn't win a single game, this so talented team didn't win one damn game the year before his rookie year, right? And some of these names that were coming about and things like that are added throughout the time Baker was there. So it's like it is, and I'm just tired with the Odell thing. Is that all right? So does Odell wanted out, and I don't think it was just Baker. I don't think it was just Baker Mayfield that was the problem. He threw a temper tantrum, and then he got to go. I've never seen anything like it. When was the last time you saw a star receiver throw a temper tantrum into the middle of the season where they just said, you know what, screw it, we release you, and then my man became a free agent? It was crazy. It was the wildest thing ever.
And not only that, Tony, but and it just kind of speaks to culture, really, because then he got celebrated, got to go to a team that was already ready made, where honestly, the way he was playing, had he not gotten hurt, I mean, he probably would have been Super Bowl MVP because he was going nuts. Like, you got to give him his credit there. But the point is that he went to a place where he wasn't the focal point. Like, he's not Cooper Kupp. He's not, and Matt, Stafford's going to go where he wants to go with the ball. And Odell would be more of a model citizen. But I think more of an indictment is like, why haven't they re-signed him? And I don't want to hear about health, because he looked really good in that Super Bowl.
My man, they went and got Allen Robinson.
Facts.
And then the whole thing is Odell went commissioned to have a painting of himself picking himself up off the ground. Like, come on, man. Like, I just don't know. I just like, it's just this idea that Odell was nicked up the whole time he was in Cleveland anyway.
Yeah.
Right. He was coming off an injury in New York. He was suffering through injuries there in Cleveland. And it just, I think that Baker, look, there's a reason all the Browns fans love, or a lot of Browns fans truly love Baker Mayfield. And at the end of the day, is that he might not be the greatest quarterback ever or this and that, but he was the first quarterback that had enough gusto, bravado, oomph to finally turn the Titanic around.
Yes. And not for nothing, here's this is what's crazy, man, is like some teams just find a lot of success at the right time. Some teams, like, I'll give you an example. Baker Mayfield's season in 2020, which is why I think when you said earlier, Cody, like, what if Baker becomes extremely successful with this team? I think the chances are extremely high. If we have 2020 Baker Mayfield, I think this is a potential Super Bowl team, the Carolina Panthers. And I know that sounds nuts, and I'm sure I'll get killed for that, and somebody will pull this take later, for me saying that. But let me say why. Because if you go back and look at his stat line from 2020 and you look at their team, if they had the same defensive prowess as the 2013 Seattle Seahawks, they beat Kansas City. They're in the AFC Championship, and there's a good chance they go to the Super Bowl. Why? Because Russell Wilson only threw for what? I think 27 touchdowns, right? He didn't have a 1,000-yard receiver. Golden Tate was the leading receiver, and he was somewhere in the neighborhood of, I think, 900 yards. Percy Harvin was in and out of the lineup hurt, which is kind of a Christian McCaffrey situation with us. And then, let's see, rushing. That's what Nick Chubb rushed for, over 1,000 yards. Kareem Hunt was 841, and Beast Mode went for like 1,200 yards himself. Russell Wilson had like 500 yards rushing. But the defense is what was insane. And I think that when you look at how our defense is built, especially with the emergence of a guy like C.J. Henderson, which could really be the X factor. Xavier Woods could be a huge X factor. This team is built to make you throw the ball and take it away from you. That's why we've struggled against the run. We go most of our defensive sets over 59% in 2020, and I think a little bit less than that in 2021, of 3-3-5. So we got 3 down linemen, 3 linebackers, 5 DBs on the field 50% of the time, right? So they're telling you what kind of identity they want us to have. If we would have had any offensive production last year, this team would have been a wild card team, in my opinion, with minimal offensive production.
And that's part of the reason why I do think that this is going to be a better team with Baker Mayfield under center. Partly because I think this offense, they're not going to put the ball in Baker's hand a ton. Like, I think the Panthers have a run-first identity. Mm-hmm. I think that's what they want to do this year. You have Christian McCaffrey coming back healthy, but they also signed Deontay Foreman as like a big, powerful, a mini version of, King James up there, or Henry rather. But I my thing with Baker is this: it's not just about him missing Odell. It's a lot about small things. I don't like his mechanics inside the pocket. I find that a lot of times he drifts to one side of the pocket or the other, even when he does have a clean pocket. I don't know if this is just, trepidation on his part. I don't know what that is. I'm hoping that that's something that he can get better at. And then this is the other one, right? It's his decision making. And it's not just his decision making, it's his decision making late in ball games, like third and fourth quarter. If you listen to Browns fans, and we've been doing that because we've been having a bunch of Browns fans in our chat room. We've had a couple come on the Friday free for all. And one thing that they all seem to kind of say is that when the game is on the line, Baker Mayfield in the fourth quarter is not the quarterback that you want the ball in his hand. Either he panics or he'll just throw a dumb interception. And I feel like, I honestly feel I'm in the minority now. I feel like Panther fans, they're ready to believe in Baker. They're like, all right, even if I wasn't down with it before, whatever, I'm Baker Mayfield now. And if the guy is good, I'm ready to cheer for him. But knowing what the Panthers have done the past 2 years at the quarterback position, by choosing to go and get a castaway from some other organization, I'm just not very confident in him coming here and all of a sudden, just riding the ship on all of these things that he has proven to have deficiencies in. Now, do they have to be his Achilles heel forever? No, he can certainly get better. But I have seen enough game-losing interceptions thrown by Baker Mayfield to give me enough pause to say, all right, I want to see him do it first before I have any kind of, celebration about Baker Mayfield being the Panthers quarterback.
Can I ask a question to you guys? And that is, how much of a reclamation project is Baker Mayfield, right? I mean, you have to say he is a reclamation project because he's not with his team. He didn't get a second deal. Is he it's not a Sam Darnold level reclamation project, is it? Is it less than or more than Kirk Cousins was? I mean, Kirk Cousins is the richest man in the world in some ways, but like, what is Baker Mayfield? Is he a failure? Is he a success? Is he a reclamation? And the reason I'm asking this is because, as you said that, Cody, I'm sitting here shaking my head like, yes, that's me. I'm the guy. I'm on team. I'm a Baker bottom now because I've been waiting for it. Yeah, I mean, like, but I wasn't that before it happened necessarily. But I also don't want to be duped into the same thing that I was duped with Sam Darnold, is that like, all those problems weren't really his problem. It's just like, and now we're going to fix it. So what level of is Baker Mayfield as a reclamation project?
Let me hear from you, CK.
I think that he's not a reclamation project, in my opinion.
I agree.
Because, I mean, he's proven to actually have success in this league. And quite honestly, he's had, if you want to get technical, he's had equal amount of success as he's had, rough years. He had a really rough sophomore slump, his second year in the league. His junior year was incredible, right? And then his fourth year was an injured year, right? And I can say that many people are using that, and it's not his throwing shoulder as a reason why it doesn't really matter. I think it still matters when you think about a quarterback. I mean, honestly, they have. There's a reason that they're mentioning it. It's not just to make it feel better about Sam Darnold. Or about Baker Mayfield. So I think that Baker Mayfield has a better track record than people are giving him credit for. Regardless of the team that he's on, he's had success. And you can't, like, the reality of the matter is like, he's been there and he's done it. Like, there's no other thing you can ask for at this point in time. Now, I mean, and then there's the argument of, well, so has Nick Foles, right? It's not the same because Nick Foles was never intended to be the type of quarterback that Baker Mayfield was kind of built to be. I think Baker Mayfield has a shot, and I don't think it's a reclamation project at all.
Hey, real quick, shout out to my man Splatter Talk Cinema Reviews. Like, I know him personally. That's my homeboy, a really good friend of mine from going back dating to high school. So what's up, man? But go ahead.
I mean, that's really the extent of what I have to say about Baker. I think he has an opportunity. I think that when you look at his stats, his tape, like I said, there's only so many times you can just use the team as an excuse. It's similar to what we dealt with Sam Darnold, or anybody that was a defender of Sam Darnold, or Baker, or I'm sorry, of Kyle Allen, or even Cam Newton. Right? There's only so much you can really blame on the team before it becomes you have to take into consideration as the quarterback as well. Well, Baker Mayfield succeeded, and it doesn't matter how good the team is. There's plenty of great teams that haven't been able to be successful even with a great quarterback.
Facts. And here's the thing, like, because you mentioned Nick Foles. We don't know. How do we know that Baker, in a new situation, new offense, new players around him, no pressure to necessarily rise? I mean, look, this ain't Cleveland.
Right.
We've been to the Super Bowl twice in 20 years. They haven't been to a playoff game once in 20, right? So this isn't a situation. I mean, the environment's different. It's the South. I mean, it's just a completely different situation. Like, how do we know that this isn't Breeze coming from San Diego to New Orleans? I mean, I'm not saying that it is or it isn't, but here's one thing I will say. I think you have to give it some time to find out if it is or not, if indeed that's the route that they want to go. Now, if they don't think Matt Corral's ready, Baker's going to get that time. Because I believe if he's healthy, here's one thing I will say. That shoulder injury, I know that many people talk about, like, well, it wasn't his throwing shoulder or whatever. But, I mean, can you imagine? You know how hard it is to, like, put on a suit when you got a cast on? You ever had a cast on your forearm and try to put a suit on?
I haven't done it, but I did hear Freddie Kitchens, his former coach, defending him and saying that while we argue that it's not the throwing shoulder, that's the tech and mechanics. You point with your non-shouldering thrower to your target, and your body is torque. It's right. Isn't it like throwing a football, like a full, like a upper body motion in way? So it's like to say, well, this shoulder's fine, I can do this, is like that gives you a dead arm. And maybe Baker tried too hard. Maybe the Browns weren't wise enough to shelve him. Who knows? But
Plus,
I mean, I just don't. It's like all those things lead to something else, And we knew that with Cam. When Cam had foot problems or back, like it just led to some other breakdown in the mechanics in a different way.
And that's my next question for Mr. Cody Lack. So, Cody, considering what Tony just said, are you willing to give Baker the same grace that we gave Cam, who had a hurt shoulder and was wildly inconsistent because of the hurt shoulder, but was still playing?
No, I'm not. I'm telling, and look, I'm gonna tell you why I'm not, right? Because if you look back at Baker's film, like, yes, he was hurt. No doubt he was hurt. And I'm not saying that didn't affect him. But sometimes bad decision making is bad decision making. And by the way, I'll say that was true with Cam as well. There were times when, he was hurt, but I think he was hurt and it got in his head so much that it caused him to just be wild and inaccurate. And he just wasn't able to plant right with that foot. Baker, it goes back to what I was saying before. I believe that a part of Baker's problem is his decision making. It's not necessarily that he can't do all the things that you might want him to do. But I think that when it's crunch time, he panics. And that worries me. It worries me a lot. And the reason why I won't compare him to Cam Newton is because at least I've seen Cam Newton in big moments overcome. Like that 2015 Giants game where Cam just, put the team on his back and did his thing. I've never seen that from Baker Mayfield. And even before the year that he was hurt, I've seen those questionable decisions from Baker Mayfield. So, yes, while I'm sure he will be a better football player this year, now that he is healthy and not dealing with that torn labrum, which I know can be hell, it still doesn't get to the root of the issue for me, and that's his decision making. And until I see that isn't a problem, I'm not inclined to believe that it's not going to be a problem.
And here's the real answer. The real answer to that question is that no one is going to get the grace from us that Cam Newton
facts.
God, and
Without
the
question,
altar
yeah.
that we worshiped at. Because look, is even the Browns. Think about this: is the Browns had a #1 draft pick who ultimately was in many ways responsible for turning around their franchise, and they parted ways with. Like our #1 draft pick who turned our franchise around is our hero.
Yeah.
Our straight hero is, but like Cam's it's such a different beast. And it's like, imagine the day that a Panthers fan's heart will be given over to another quarterback like it was to Cam Newton.
You know what's
That's
so
going to
weird
be a
about that,
special
Cody?
dude.
What's so crazy about what you were saying about what's crazy about what you were saying about the Cam and Baker thing is that Baker, and I know people are gonna go crazy when they hear me say this, but statistically, Baker had more success early than Cam did earlier in his career.
With the better cast and crew around.
No, I wouldn't necessarily say a better cast, Cody, because here's the thing: is that Cam his third year had the best defense arguably in history for a moment. Like is that in that 2013 defense for the Panthers. I just mean
offensive personnel, the options
I mean,
that he has available.
It wasn't that terrible. It wasn't that awful. He had D'Angelo. It wasn't completely terrible, man. He had Shockey and Olsen to start and different things.
At the same time, yeah.
Yeah, and so it's not like that narrative that Cam didn't have anything kind of comes around out of the 14, 15, 16 drafts because all of those dudes turned out to be busts, and then we didn't ever go and get him nobody when he was the MVP.
For 2 years,
right? Yeah, but he brought Cam brought Steve Smith off the shelf. Steve Smith had been on the shelf for like 3 years, man, and all of a sudden he's back, and then he's blood and guts in after he leaves. I think Cam Newton's success, though, is like if we, sometimes when you think back at the past, and I teach history for a living, and I we try to lump everybody's life into one kind of moment. And, so if you think of like a past individual or like, oh, their whole life was a failure. Oh, their whole life was a success. And then you think about it, it's an arc. And Cam Newton's arc, the crest of it was in his 4th year.
Right.
I mean, so that's the thing is like, and maybe this NFL of late has changed the timeline so much to where we're not ready to wait 4 years for a guy to be great. But Cam also was just a freak. So we all knew he was going to be awesome. And he was just like single-handedly doing stuff that other people couldn't do.
The reality of this too, keep in mind, we're saying that Baker Mayfield has had a better team, right? We're thinking about just from an offensive perspective, because their year wasn't fantastic his rookie year. But let's talk about his rookie year, for instance. He had a rookie Nick Chubb who only played 9 games, right? So that wasn't like they were leaning heavily on him. He had Jarvis Landry who played 14 games, right? Only had 976 yards, nothing crazy. Jarvis Landry wasn't a game breaker. He had an early David Njoku with only 600 yards, right? I mean, the dude, like he was, like you said, he was spreading the ball around, but at the end of the day, I mean, those weren't like, again, Nick Chubb was a rookie and he only played 9 games that year. Yet Antonio Callaway was one of his wide receivers. Like, I mean, these guys are not, world beaters. They weren't like it just wasn't like, I think we're making an expectation that it was great, but the reality is they came off of a really bad year, right? They went from a winless season into Baker Mayfield. You can't say that he went from a 0-win team to a great team the next year. That doesn't make sense. There's no logic to that statement, right? So I mean,
it's a team for a reason,
right?
Yeah.
And so I think you've got to give him some credit in that respect too, right?
I mean,
I think too, the other thing, real quick, Cody, I know because you're a draft guy. See, I think a lot of the people who think the Browns are really good are draft dudes, and that's because they had a lot of top draft picks. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you're good, and maybe that. Like, for all we know I'm waiting for David Njoku to be that guy. I'm still waiting. Like, I mean, I wouldn't put him as a top tight end, and I don't think it's because he's been in a poor system necessarily or something to that effect. So, I mean, it's just a high draft pick until otherwise. That's the only thing is that there was a lot of name recognition in draft picks alone, but they were also young players. And to remind people, Nick Chubb was also who was the guy not no Sean Marino, who was
Georgia, Sony Michel.
Sony Michel went ahead
Mhm.
of Nick Chubb. So I mean, it was like I don't know if I'm not saying revisionist history, but I feel like we're compressing all of that of what guys are today in that roster into that singular moment. Maybe they were 0-16. There was no they were a worse team when Baker got on them than Cam was when he came to the Carolina Panthers. We were 2-14 that year before.
Yeah, and they were just aimlessly picking players. Like, I think Panther Pickle just said in the chat, Manziel was a number one, well, day one pick. So like a lot of times, like I don't think that when Cleveland drafts players, like they had to bring someone in to put it all together, obviously, because Hugh Jackson clearly wasn't the guy. But I also think because Hugh Jackson has had some success with other teams in this league as a coordinator, so they were just like literally throwing stuff at the wall just to see what sticks. So like I think that, like I said, this whole thing that Baker had this amazing team, like no, I think that this team meshed around him and his personality and what he was able, to create as far as momentum there. But
and was there a story before Odell Beckham that he was divisive with players? I don't remember that ever being a storyline when it comes to Baker Mayfield. Now, did he banter back and forth with the media at times? Did he go and plant the flag? Where was it, at Texas or whatever the hell he was at?
Ohio State.
Ohio State puts the flag. Did he do some of those things that maybe that created him as a polarizing figure to the world? Yes, but I don't remember a narrative existing that he was a poor leader, he was immature on the team prior to the Odell Beckham's dad slander campaign, which you got to give them credit, dude. In many ways, is like they really pushed until they got what they wanted.
They really did. Cody, before I move on to the next question, you got anything to respond to all this?
I mean, listen, I've been saying forever on our C3 podcast, it's prove it season. It's prove it season. I'm not giving anybody any flowers until they earn it. Like, everyone's allowed to think different on Baker Mayfield. And look, I see you already got the shirt. If you're excited about Baker, I invite everybody to stay excited. I'm just saying, if it goes south, remember who told you that it was going to go south. And not even that it's going to go south. It's just, I feel like Baker has some tendencies that really worry me. And again, like what you got, like, pardon me, but CK said earlier, like if we're just good enough this year to get a few more games and be marginally better, then, maybe we're moving on from Matt Rule. And maybe then it's Matt Corral's up anyway.
Right.
So at the end of the day, I'm going to pull for the Panthers. The Panthers are my team. I just think Baker Mayfield has a lot of improving to do. I would like to see him do that here. I'm just not a believer until I see it happen. But, hey, everyone's excited, and someone has to be the Debbie Downer. I guess this year it has to be me, dude. I'm okay playing the heel.
That's a strong hill to die on. I was laughing with Mike Ricks. We had a take that was absolutely horrible last year where we talked about Cam Ervin and his left tackle play, early in the season for like the first 3 games. And after that Texans game, I was like, man, we should really be supporting Cam Ervin at left tackle. And I go back and look at that. Like today, we were kind of going back and forth on Twitter with each other. Like, bro, that like we literally died on that hill, bro. Like, so Mike Ricks, if you in the chat, yeah, we still dead on that hill, stinking. But shout out to Big Willie Style. Big Willie Style said, if Baker plants the flag in Atlanta, New Orleans, and Tampa Bay, he'll have a statue made of him.
You will 100%.
So that moves me on to question number 3. But before I go to question 3, man, I got to do a C3 tradition on the One Carolina show. CK, you know what to do.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls of all ages, anybody tuning in, watching this show, have not hit that like button, haven't hit that thumbs up on the first show back from my boy One Carolina? I have one thing to say to all you absolute freaks. Subscriber shame.
You heard it, man. Subscriber shame. Shout out to CK, C3 Panther Podcast, Cody Lack, Tony. We in the house right now So we're going to move on, keep going. Make sure you hit that like button, subscribe button, and bell notification so you don't miss a video. Shameless plug, man. You see it, 6 Mayfield. If you like the shirt, man, onecarolinashop.com, man. Go ahead and cop one. I got it in black and silver. Man, I'm telling you, we're doing it big this year. Panther Nation, I think we're going to, like, this is just going to be crazy because I do have to say one quick thing. Baker Mayfield, what he is going to do for this franchise, what he's going to do for a guy like DJ Moore, putting him on the national, scale. A guy like, he can make Tommy Tremble, a guy that becomes a media guy as well, especially when you see how he's acting in practice and stuff like that, which is hilarious, So, I mean, this is going to be really cool to watch. But with that being said, question number 3, man, which 3 quarterbacks do you guys think stay on the roster?
I think the easy answer is Baker, Sam, and Matt. And then PJ ends up being the odd man out. I gotta say, Tony has really converted me with this idea of his lately. It's just time to cut bait with Sam. Just make Matt Corral the backup who's learning on the job. And then PJ, at least PJ has some experience here. This is going to be his 3rd year now that he's in the system. So it's like, even if something were to happen to Matt Corral, well, at least you have PJ who has a big arm, has the mobility. He can do some of the things that you want him to, and he has familiarity with the rest of the team. I said this the other day in one of the Panthers press conference videos. I'm sure Sam Darnold's a nice guy. Mm-hmm. I'm sure we could hang out and have a beer and whatever, and I'm sure he's a wonderful dude to get to know. But just as a football player, this ain't it, man. It's really not. And I hate to say it that way because I'm sure that's been his dream for as long as he can remember, to be a starting NFL quarterback.
Right.
But it doesn't seem like that's in the cards for Sam Darnold. I kind of feel like being a career backup is probably the best that he's going to be able to do from this point forward. And he's already kind of in that position anyway. So, yeah, I think it'll be our big 3. And sadly, I think PJ is probably going to get the one to get the axe.
Tony, what you say?
I hope the Carolina Panthers finally, for once, don't keep 3 quarterbacks and just keep 2. Is that this kind of doomsday scenario where Baker is hurt for such a prolonged period of time that you're scared to, not scared, but you need 2 quarterbacks on the roster to manage in that moment, so say Baker goes out and it's a 4-week, 6-week window and you actually have to have another player, then go sign a veteran at that moment to come in and back up a guy you can go and get, there's probably 20 other people out there in the world that you could do that for. Look, I remember when we brought out Vinny Testaverde to play a couple of games. I think that Sam Darnold just muddies the waters for how we should feel. And we saw Matt Rule last year get put in some pressure situations where he thought the quarterback was the problem. Mm-hmm. And he flip-flopped every moment he could. It's at one point it looked like, I don't even know. It's like, how did the Sam Darnold injury even come about? I almost still feel like they sent him into the back of they sent him with the doctor and they said, find something wrong with him so we could do something else. Like, it was like, so there was no missed days. There was no nothing. And then you bring in Cam and it's just this relentless, like, oh, they have one episode where they're not doing well or they hit some sort of wall or challenge. And Matt Rule was so quick to be like, well, we're going to put him on the bench and then remember he would put Sam Darnold on the bench just for a moment and then he'd bring him back for a quarter. Yeah. And it was just, I don't want to see that I don't want us to get in a position where Baker Mayfield all of a sudden is that we have a pretty good team and Baker Mayfield hits some struggles. And then they're like, well, let's put in Sam. And then this and that is like, I just want the clear definition of the order of command. And I think it should be Baker, Matt Corral, and then I don't care about PJ. If we're in a position where we need PJ Walker or we need anything like that, it's already terrible. It's already terrible. So I just and I feel like then what Matt Corral can do is not win the job, but
Sorry, I'm
step in
afraid
if
of
Baker Mayfield gets hurt. And that's just what I want. I'm tired of 3 quarterbacks. And teams that have a real quarterback don't keep 3 quarterbacks.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Good point. CK?
Listen, it's Baker and Matt season with maybe PJ hanging around. I don't like, and I feel bad almost. I feel bad for Sam Darnold at the end of the day. Like, not that I think that he's a good quarterback, and I just like he's just, you know, he had so end up like he's like, honestly, like you know, we talk about it. He seems like a nice guy. Like, he doesn't seem like an asshole that nobody wants to be around. It's not one of those situations where like you were hoping this guy would fail. I think that right now it's gotta be move on from Sam Darnold. I mean, the thing that sucks is if you can't find somebody to trade for him, like, we're eating that salary anyway. So, I mean, do I think we're going to? Probably not. But do I think it makes sense to try to get, you know, maybe get rid of old Sammy Dimes? I think at this point in time, we got to really consider that to be a reality.
Yeah, and you know, I think the whole reason that this quarterback competition exists is because of what you just said, CK. I think that the evil genius inside of Scott Fitter is like, all right, if we can allow this to go on for as long as we possibly can, like, we can get something for Sam Darnold. Like, if he has a decent preseason showing, there's going to be a team out there. 49ers are getting, you know, they were linked to Sam Darnold before we went out and gave the farm for him the year before last. So, you know, maybe they go grab him, you know, once Garoppolo's gone. New York Giants, you know, I think Sam Darnold could be a great backup and someone that could help, you know, continue to groom a guy like Daniel Jones. And one thing, I think the backup quarterback position is extremely underrated. And a guy like Sam Darnold would be a good backup in Carolina. I don't think that he would be a good backup to have behind Baker Mayfield, but because it gives you that kind of safety blanket if you're Matt Rule, like, all right, well, if Baker starts thinking it up, I can just go right to, you know, Sam Darnold. And it's like, no, let Baker, if he messes up, and you're gone too. Like, but let him play out the season as long as he's healthy. Let Sam Darnold play out the season as long as he's healthy. Whoever it is at behind center, let them play it out. If it turns out to be Matt Corral, roll with him while he's going through the lumps. But the point is that a guy like Sam and his, like, not for nothing, Sam Darnold's handling of the New York media was mastery. The Jets' job is not an easy job by any stretch. And to be that quarterback on that back page every single day, from the highs to the lows, when he comes out and carves Dallas in his very first game after throwing a pick six, super high. But when he comes out and says, I'm seeing ghosts, super low, and he can never live it down. You know what I'm saying? And so, to me, as far as Sam's projection in the league, I mean, look, I know people don't like to hear this, and people like to throw the stones at Sam or whatever like that. But listen, Sam Darnold started playing quarterback very late in his life. A lot of these guys have been groomed since they were little, man. Like the Mannings, these guys were groomed to be quarterbacks. You know what I'm saying? Matt Corral was groomed to be a quarterback. He had been a quarterback forever. Baker Mayfield had been a quarterback forever. Kyler Murray. Sam was playing linebacker in high school up until junior season. He only played two meaningful years at USC. He came in as the youngest starting quarterback in NFL history. So I don't think it's a foregone conclusion because of the kind of guy Sam is. If he wants to stay in the NFL as a backup, he's probably going to be Josh McCown, where he's always going to have a job because he's just a really good locker room guy, right? But listen, we've seen guys have late surges in their careers. We saw Rich Gannon win an MVP late in his career with the Raiders after he started off rough. We've seen Steve Young go years with the USFL, with the Tampa Bay Bucks, and sitting behind Montana for years to go on to be a Hall of Famer. Terry Bradshaw struggled. I was watching a special that he talked about on HBO Max where Chuck Noll hated him, man. Like for the first 4 years of his career, he was terrible. And then it just clicked. And I mean, but I think with Sam, the thing that has to happen in order for any of what I just said to be a possibility is his mentality has to change at some level. Like he's got to become more of a competitor because I think that's one of the missing ingredients for him. So my final, I say the the quarterback room looks like Baker, Matt Corral, and PJ. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, again, Sam, I kind of think he's had his opportunity and it's kind of passed him by. Like you said, he could be a McCown type of player, but I think that's, especially the fact that Matt Rule has been splitting the first team reps between Sam and Baker has still come out on top. What, Baker has been a Panther for a whole 3.5 weeks or something, if that, the fact that Baker is already looking better than Sam with guys that Sam played with last year, it's just a further indictment on what we felt like we all already knew about Sam.
Right, I agree. So, Cody, I'm kind of done with the quarterback questions, and so here's what I want to ask too, because building on top of what you just said, because I have been known to be a Matt Rule apologist, and I'm gonna be honest with you, this offensive line situation, I can't support it. I cannot support it at all. And the reason I can is because I can go through so many different names. Creed Humphrey from last year, or Tevin Jenkins, or I may have that name wrong. But this year, Charles Cross starting left tackle for the Seattle Seahawks. Evan Neal starting right tackle for the New York Giants. I am one of those people like you, Cody, who believes that Brady Christensen is a left tackle. Like through and through, he's a left tackle. He was an All-American left tackle. He never played any other position. He was a left tackle, right, at BYU. All-American. So was Icky, right? But Icky has, even his scouting report says that he was so much better as a run blocker. Like as a run blocker, Icky's probably potential, if he stays healthy and learns the offense, he could be a Hall of Famer, right? He's one of those kind of guys, like Quentin Nelson, right? To be a guard, right? And I think sometimes what happens is that because we've been inept for so long at a certain position, we think that when he's drafted, it's like an automatic, like, oh, he's got to be the left tackle because it's the sexy thing to say because we drafted him so high. And I'm like, well, no. Like if he turns out to be a Hall of Fame left guard, it wasn't a wasted pick, or if he turns out to be a decent left guard, it wasn't a wasted pick. It was the perfect pick, and especially even if Brady Christensen in the 3rd round, who Matt Rule says was a what did he say, 3rd round guard, 4th round tackle or something crazy? He
said he was a 3rd round tackle and a 2nd round guard.
Yeah.
He never played a snap of guard at BYU.
Exactly. And so my point is that the fact that this guy is not even getting reps with the ones, it just tells me that Matt Rule has not broken. Some people, when they leave certain professions, I've often said this and heard this before. Salespeople oftentimes make horrible managers. It's the reason why companies go out and hire managers, going through a pool of or hiring recruiters to find you a good manager, because salespeople are extremely selfish and it's hard to change their mentalities, right? So the same thing exists with Matt Rule. It's like, listen, this is not college, man. You are not in 100% control. Yes, you are the head coach, but I just can't stand behind the fact that I know James Campen has to be thinking like, man, what are we doing? Like, what do y'all say to that?
I mean, so a lot of people online are saying that James Campen is part of this decision. So to add a little bit of context for all of our viewers, Brady Christensen has gotten the lion's share of the first team reps at left tackle. And they are making Icky, the number 6 overall pick this year, basically battle for that same position, battle for the left tackle spot. Now, John, you and I are of the same mindset, brother. I think Brady Christensen is best suited playing left tackle. He's a very athletic big man. That is what he is good at doing. I never bought into the short arm syndrome. I believe that, yes, while you want to have longer levers, there are many techniques that will allow someone to be able to overcome an arm length disadvantage if they have one. On top of that, us being such a run-first football team, I want to see Christian McCaffrey running behind Akim Ekwonu at left guard. Like, there is this mindset amongst fans that left guard is just a wholly invaluable position compared to left tackle, or it's devalued. Left tackle is so much more important, and I just don't buy that.
Go look at where most of our sacks were given up. Look at where the majority of our sacks were given up last year. It was interior. Yeah, it's interior.
And in today's NFL, more quarterbacks now are more mobile than ever before. It's easier for them to evade edge pressure than it is for them to be able to evade someone barreling right up the center at them. If a quarterback has a pocket to be able to throw from, you will have a more successful quarterback. I believe that the left guard position for the Carolina Panthers is probably more important than left tackle at this juncture in time. That's why I want Akim Ekwonu to play left guard. The reason I have such a problem with Matt Rule is that he hasn't taken one snap with Akim Ekwonu at left guard at first team. He is dead set on either putting Michael Jordan or Pat Elflin at guard instead of either Brady Christensen and Akim Ekwonu. And it's like, why not maximize all the talent that the Carolina Panthers have, put them in a favorable position now, so that way they can be gelled and they can be on the same page by the time we're playing our first snap of meaningful NFL football. I feel like Matt Rule is prolonging the inevitable. He did so last year by not giving Christensen enough of a chance to play left tackle last year. James Campen even said that they wish that they had more snaps from Christensen at left tackle. And I just feel like Matt Rule has such a bone to pick with rookie offensive players that he has this thing where they must prove themselves. They must prove themselves worthy to play NFL football. And it's so pompous and stuck up, in my opinion. Why is it every year you see rookies on every other football team come in and make an instant impact on offense, but you rarely ever see that for Carolina? It was a problem with Ron Rivera. It's a bigger problem under Matt Rule than Ron Rivera, and it's driving me up a wall, man. I think that it's hurting us in the long run.
I agree. CK, you look like you had something you wanted to say.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I was, there are certain things I understand. I understand wanting to not just hand over the reins to a guy who hasn't earned it, especially if you believe that he's not up to par, right? But you didn't draft this guy in the second round, right? You didn't draft him in the third round. You drafted him in the first. And not only did you draft him in the first, you drafted him in the top 10, right? So I think when you have a guy like that, you've got to have trust that this guy is going to be able to learn. And I think we can all agree that there are certain things that you just can't do. Like at certain positions, I understand maybe taking a step back from the idea of having them start the first year. And quarterback is one of those, right? I can understand quarterback giving it a time to develop. But offensive line, if they've got the physical skill set, the only thing that's going to help them is reps in a real life environment, right?
Yeah.
And it's kind of the same way I feel about this whole quarterback competition, right? It's right now, I think there is no doubts, right? I think we believe that Icky is going to be on this starting lineup at the beginning of the year, right? Yeah. I think the coaching staff believe that, but I think right now Matt Rule is more interested in proving a point than he is in developing his skill set, right? And I think that iron sharpens iron, as they say, right? Or steel sharpens steel, whatever that saying is. So do you want Icky to go up against second string, third stringers, or do you want him to go up against these guys that are top contenders? Do you want him to go up against the Brian Burns on a every down play to be able to actually come in here and actually show what he's capable of doing? I think the offensive line is the one position you don't want to be sitting on your hands for. Let these guys compete at the highest level, especially if you believe this guy has what it takes to be the starting left tackle or left guard. Now, he's
already shown you that, and I'm sorry to cut you off real quick, just to add to your point. He's already shown you what he can do to the second tier guys. He put Marquise Haynes in shackles today.
Right. No, and like I said, at the end of the day, I mean, I've seen nothing to indicate that he shouldn't be at least in the conversation for being the at least taking first team reps. Like there's just nothing that I've seen yet. I think right now we're just doing again. I think that's where my biggest question mark for Matt Rule is coming from. Is I think he's learning a lot, and I think we can all see progress in what he's done, not only with his coaching staff, but with what he has decided to do with this team. but I think he's still holding on to this college mentality that nobody, like, you're dealing with the top athlete. Like, you're not dealing with the same people you were dealing with in college, right?
That's
You're
an
not getting
important point.
walk-ons.
That's a
You know what I
very
mean?
important point. I think there's a kind of a good and bad to this situation. I actually think that him putting Brady Christensen with the ones at left tackle is more about finding out is not about Akim Ekwonu actually as a talent. I think it's more about finding out who Brady Christensen is. So you have a top talent right behind you, chasing you hard, and we're really going to try to find out if you have the mettle to play left tackle in the NFL. We've seen some of you doing it at guard. I wonder if this actually is Matt Rule maturing a bit. Maybe James Campen coming in here and saying you can't pigeon this guy into playing guard alone like you thought. I think too there's an opportunity if that competition, if Brady Christensen looks that good at the end of the week, at the end of the camp or whatever, then I think it would be easier to plug and play Ekwonu into guard position, right? Is I think the more worrisome part is if you gave Akim Ekwonu the left tackle position and then you tried to force Brady Christensen into a position that was maybe unnatural to him in a way, and you kind of just lose that talent. My last point when it comes to this, and so I just think, I mean, I see this is like if Brady Christensen has what it takes to play left tackle, I think we'll see Ekwonu playing left guard. Like I just think that will happen, and I don't think that they're missing so much. He's going to miss so many reps and something that where they don't gel. I think this is just more learning if Brady Christensen could be the answer there, or if we need to not think of him like that. My last point about this is, and maybe this is, one thing that Matt Rule has done well this past year is he's admitted he was wrong. And he admitted he's wrong with his coaching staff. He went and tried to do it his way. He tried to go with an inexperienced staff and all of this. And then he finally brought in the NFL heavy hitters with Campen, Tabor, all of these guys that he brought in have years and years of NFL experience. And I think that's an admission that he needed to change something. But what I agree with CK on this is I've had this theory that because Matt Rule was coaching teams like Temple and then Baylor under all of their problems, that he was always having to deal with kind of the leftover talent to go and get. So what he would do is start identifying traits. He would be like, all right, I need a tight end. So I need a guy who's athletic, tall, this meets all these criteria, and then I'll make him a tight end, right? Because then he checks these boxes. And I wonder if him saying that about Brady Christensen, I see him as a guard or something, was more of him trying to scout based on like this belief set of what a guard is.
That's a really, really good point.
As opposed to what his skill set was.
Right. Yeah. And you don't have to do that in the NFL. You know what I'm saying? It's like you don't have to do. You're the top of the top at this point. You're getting all the Alabama recruits.
Because
and also,
go ahead. You see it work both ways because, like, it works out for a guy like for instance on defense, it works out for a Chin who can play in the box, who they moved up for. That was a Matt Rule pick, no doubt. Because of the talent level. But it blows up in your face for a guy like Derek Brown, in my opinion. Because I think in a true 4-3 defense, Derek Brown might be a Pro Bowler, where he's always, because he moves and shifts on so many different levels of the line. Derek Brown is a nose tackle. If he is Vince Wilfork. He's not like, I think the expectation was that he was going to be an Aaron Donald kind of guy because of how he dominated in college. But no, he's a true nose tackle. Like he's a Vince Wilfork. So if they played him like that in a true 4-3, like if he was on that defense that we had with Thomas and Luke and all those guys standing beside KK in like the Star Lotulelei position, he'd be dominant.
John, you and I, we may not agree on Baker, but I'll be damned if we don't agree on just about everything else, man. I could not agree with you more. So many people get down on Derek Brown because he isn't the sack monster. I'm like, he was never gonna be. That's
Right.
never who he was drafted to be.
Right.
He was a big-time run stuffer. You plop in the middle of your D-line. He's going to eat up double teams and give everyone else a one-on-one matchup.
Yep.
That's what Derek Brown is meant to do. Now, because it's not so flashy, that actually makes him the most important member of our defense.
Yes.
Meaning everything flows faster because of Derek Brown. Look no further than Luke Kuechly. He always deferred all the credit to his success to Star Latulele and K1 Short being dominant on the inside.
How did we not learn this lesson with Star? You know, how did we not learn this lesson?
Well,
and I am one of those people who is guilty of maybe underrating Star at the moment, maybe just because I loved KK so much because he was a second rounder and this and that, and he turned out to be so damn awesome for a stint. But we saw how important they were as a tandem. We also saw what happened to KK without Star beside him. And I just wonder where the narrative that Derek Brown hasn't been good actually comes from. He's played all these games. He came in and started from day one. You put him in there. He's been available.
Yes.
Our defense has continued to get better since we've had him. The only part of the narrative that Derek Brown is not living up to what he was supposed to be is that one moment where Matt Rule benched him last year or didn't start him, and then he brought him right in. You know what I'm saying? Like, he brought him right in. Is that if you measure him, we never thought Star was a failure.
Right. As a matter of fact, Star fell to us for two reasons. Number one,
the heart thing,
but then he also had some off the field issues because there was potential that if either one of those things wouldn't have happened, Star might have been either pick one or two because he was just that high coming out of Utah, right? But see, the same thing exists for a guy like YGM, right? YGM would go to a team like Green Bay or not Green Bay. Let's see, maybe even the Dallas, like
Kansas City.
Okay, Kansas City. YGM might end up going to a team like that and excelling. Why? Because if you go back and watch his college tape, where does he excel? He's a defensive end in a wide nine stance. So if he gets an opportunity to come at you with a bull rush, he's going to knock you right over. And that's exactly what he did in college and why he's recruited so high. But when you put him at a 3-tech in the defense that we run, where he's standing right beside like a Davion Nixon or something to try to rush him up the middle, that's not his position.
Yeah.
So this whole idea that, we're not getting the kind of production we need out of him. No, it's because these guys are not playing in position because this team is predicated around defensive backs and not defensive tackles. Right.
And like, isn't Matt Rule kind of the through line to all of this that we're talking about? Left tackle, left guard, and how we're doing our defense. I feel like Matt Rule, the biggest critique I have of this man is that he does not know how to best utilize his own talent.
Right.
And I feel like it's driving me crazy. Tim Estes in the chat said something that I believe is just the honest to God truth. Don't care where Icky plays as long as he starts. And I don't want people to confuse, I want Christensen to play left tackle and Icky at guard, but I don't care which order it is. Just get them both on the field at the same time. That's all I'm asking for. Both of these men, both Brady Christensen and Kevin Kwanu, are far too good of football players for one of them to be on the bench in favor of the other. They either need to be side by side, or that's it. They need to be side by side, one way or the other, either at left guard or at left tackle. But the other thing I wanted to say, and Tony kind of led me down this path, right now you're hearing Matt Rule say, Icky has a long way to go. And Taylor Moton in his press conference today even kind of echoed that sentiment too, that, he's a rookie, he's got some ways to go. So now there's this this notion that, part of the reason why Icky isn't getting the first team reps is because he's struggling a little bit. Well, if you wanted to get the Kevin Kwanu out on the field, isn't it an easier path to being a left guard than it is to being a left tackle? I feel like
did Taylor Moton really say that?
Yeah.
Taylor Moton said that he's been working with Icky on technique stuff and just showing him the ins and the outs. And just
they did that to Taylor Moton too, if you guys remember that. Is that thing, it took forever for them to put him in, it felt like. I think this is that when it comes, the only point I was going to interject it with is that, and where I support this is why aren't these guys, let's have these guys on the field wherever they play, particularly Icky. What has shown us in any worlds that Michael Jordan or F-Line have been anything more than below average players in their career?
Good point.
You know what I mean? Like, where have they excelled? F-Line maybe for momentarily has looked better at center.
Yes, I was going to say
than he has at guard. But you often wonder, too, is that because he really is good at center or just that bad at guard where he looks better at the other position? And was he just an upgrade from the guy who was playing center before at the moment and how bad that was? There's a reason these guys weren't on teams for very long. F-Line's been on he's on his third team. Michael Jordan is a undrafted, I don't need maybe a deep round pick that came from Ohio that went to Cincinnati or to
he was undrafted.
Yeah. And so, like, where is it that they have shown so much promise?
Michael Jordan hype, because Y Big Jordan asked a good question. Where does the Michael Jordan hype come from? I think it was a lot of guard really offensive line in particular is instinct. Like, that's what to me makes Brady Christensen just so much better at this time at that tackle position than probably any other lineman on the roster, is because if you go back and watch the few times that he did get to start last year, like, he moves like he's in sync with the whoever's at center, right? As soon as that ball is snapped, his legs are already moving. That's a talent, because most guys that do that would jump offside. So it's a feel for the game. It's just instinct. I think with Michael Jordan, I did see one play, and I mean, they're few and far between plays. The guy is strong as an ox. That's one reason. Like, he's super strong. But now, is it enough for him to be in the starting lineup? Absolutely not. But the play, there's a drive that I talk about often in the Minnesota game. Remember when Sam drove us from like the end zone all the way down the field and scored to tie the game? Well, that fourth down play, you can see mastery at Michael Jordan's position, blocking his guy and then going to help clean up with Cam Irvin's guy. So he just barrels his guy over, goes and help Cam Irvin's guy, and it frees up Sam enough to be able to, throw that strike to Ian Thomas. And so I think it's that kind of stuff that they probably see in practice, and then some of it on the field that they say, okay, we got something here, but I think it's something that's a backup. I don't think it's something that's a starter, because I think that Icky, in my opinion, like we talk about, is more suited for that position because of his understanding and his strength. But I also think that Icky is probably coming along slower with the playbook because his college system was completely different from anything that McAdoo is trying to run here. And that might be the reason why they're bringing him along slowly. Which was
the concern. Like, I mean, that was not, I won't say the concern is no one thought that Icky wasn't going to be a good NFL player. It was just when you looked at him, and who was the other tackle that went right after, who was the next one that went in the draft, Cody? It was Icky we got our pick, Icky, and then Detroit got him, I think.
Yeah, it was
Penei Sewell? No, that was the year before.
No, you're thinking of the year before. It was right. It went Icky, then Evan Neal, then Charles Cross.
Oh yeah, Charles Cross was thought to be better in pass. It was like that was where he would be suited for a system, and then Neal was the kind of heavier guy in between that.
Mr. Well-rounded, and then Icky was, I'm going to take your lunch money.
So this isn't even really that surprising, to be honest, and if anyway, is that like that would be less of his strength right out the gate. And there's nothing to say that if he is a guard this year, that doesn't mean he's not a tackle next year.
Right. I got a question for y'all. I just a sidebar question really quick, just to change the subject for 2 seconds. Like, I'm probably going to get killed for asking this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Do y'all have any buyer's remorse on J.C. Horn when you see what Pat Surtain has been doing in camp and then what he did last year?
No, none whatsoever.
Oh, hey, man, what a good question.
How about this? I'll take J.C. Horn over Patrick Surtain right now.
Healthy J.C. Horn?
Healthy J.C.
Well, it's got to be healthy J.C. Horn. You got to say that. You got to have that caveat. Only time will tell at this point.
Yeah.
Right, is that I think that there was concerns where I don't know what were the concerns about Surtain? Were there any, or was he just like kind of a all around prospect? I think that just the upside of Horn was just so like he had such an upside that came with it. But yeah, man, when you this is one of those things when you've got the coin flip, and go back to this is like we've had this coin flip in Carolina now. This will be one of the 2 or 3 times we've had it in recent memory. You do this now with Icky, you had your choice. You had your choice of the tackle. So if he turns out to be like Jeff Otah, I was thinking that DJ Moore, Calvin Ridley. Look, you won on that one, right? We have is like only time will tell, but right now is that Surtain kind of the slander. I think there's some people in here that worship Horn so much already. They have coordinated. I know you guys have coordinated him as like a Hall of Famer in this. I mean, I hope it turns out, but at the same time, like I'm going to have to see more than 3 games. And right now, his availability is going to be one of those big things. But it's early. It's so early.
I just wonder if he's one of those guys that's so explosive that these kind of injuries are always going to be in the lingering. You know what I'm saying? Because of just how explosive he plays.
Like a Bo Jackson where he's just ready to explode out of his hip.
I just think that we all just need to kind of pump the brakes. Because, we talked about this a week ago. Like, obviously, the inner jaded Panthers fan, especially after everything we've been through with Christian, is like, oh, dude, here we go again. We're going to be dealing with JC Horn foot injuries every 3 weeks or whatever. I say just pump the brakes. This man is an elite athlete. CJ Henderson has looked incredible in training camp. Dude, I'm telling you, if JC Horn can just stay healthy,
that's it. That's going to be the whole question.
We have the best 2 young corners in the NFL, bar none. I'll fight anyone on that.
Well, we're going to have to see some more out of
I'm fighting now, boy. Those are my dogs. They're going to shut it down this year.
Which is why I say this. I know that the Super Bowl talk with me is always something that people are like, yo, hang on, slow down, whatever. Cool. All right, I get it. But let me just say this. The St. Louis Rams in 1999 or 1998, excuse me, were 4-12. They came out the next season and went 13-3 and won the Super Bowl. Why did they do it?
Marshall Faulk.
Marshall Faulk was one addition.
Christian McCaffrey, baby.
Quarterback change. There's a lot of similarities there. We have we don't have an Isaac Bruce on the roster, but we got a Torrey Holt and DJ Moore. We got a stretch the field guy that looks similar to a Ted Ginn that we had once before who went to a Super Bowl with Carolina. And furthermore, like I said, this defense, Matt Rule has told you who he wants to be defensively. Like, go back and look at that Seahawks team that Scott Fitter came from that won the Super Bowl that smoked Denver, right? They did not have a single player. This is why the whole Brian Burns thing, listen, we may want Brian Burns to be the Hassan Reddick 13-sack-a-guy game, but he don't have to be. Why? Because on that Seahawks team, they didn't have a single player that had over 10 sacks. Not a single one.
Was that 2013?
That was 2013, but they had Richard Sherman who had 8 picks. Bobby Wagner had a few picks. KJ Wright had a pick or two. What was the other guy? The other secondary guy. I don't think it was Brandon. Anyway, they had the guys who had picks. Like, the secondary was ridiculous. And that's who this team has told us who they want to be. Like I said, lining up in a 3-3-5 multiple times, they want you to force you to throw the ball. And if you look at the times where our offense against New Orleans, against even Atlanta at one point early in the year, when our offense played at minimal level, we were smoking teams because, especially that New Orleans game, I think that's more of a microcosm of who we could be, right, than who we were later in the season, because we want you to throw the ball.
I feel like we built this defense from back to front, and that's it's hard for us to see what that can be because we're used to the Ron Rivera defense, which was built the completely other way. And which is what a great juxtaposition. That 2013 season was the exact season that the best Panthers defense, there's 2 best Panthers defenses ever. And that's the one where we go to Super Bowl in 2003. And then there's the next one where in 2013, where we had like 60 some sacks or whatever with the Kraken and Charles Johnson. And then you brought in Starr and took KK or just balling out. You had Mike Mitchell back there, but that was predicated on sacks. And that defense, that Carolina defense was on such a historic run at one point that they have numbers that were surpassing the 85 Bears defense. And then somehow we finished second that year in defense to the Seattle Seahawks that year, which their defense was crazy awesome. I also like, and I just want to, and I think I take a lot of heat. I am not sold that Christian McCaffrey's injury prone.
I'm
So
not
I
either.
think this. So I'm ready. So like while I want to say pump the brakes on the Super Bowl talk because it's more about tempering my expectations, not that your take is ridiculous, right? It's just more about me tempering my hopes and dreams a little bit and just say, man, I just want a really positive step forward is really what I'm hoping for.
Right.
But Christian McCaffrey, just because he's had these 2 years that have been problematic or these soft tissue injuries or whatever, is that I don't know. Like, I'm just not ready to say he's done. Like people are all like, and I'm not even ready to shelve him in bubble wrap, man. I'm just saying this is because I remember Marshall Faulk. And I tell you this is Christian McCaffrey is the only guy that is like since then that could hold Marshall Faulk's jockstrap at all. Like even like that dude's numbers were fucking sick, bro.
Yeah.
And they were like 7 years in a row. There's only been one, I guess the only other running back I can remember that had such a dynamic type season was Chris Johnson.
Yeah. And as far as injury is concerned, like, I mean, we see Fred Taylor playing for Jacksonville, kind of not late in his career, but later in his career had a couple of years, 1 year where he was injured and he was out for a while. And then, he kind of lingered the following year. And then he came back and still had a couple of 1,000-yard seasons. So it's not unheard of for Christian to bounce back at all. He's still very
People
young.
thought Marshawn was done at one point. So I'm not ready. I drafted Christian McCaffrey number 4 in my fantasy draft. I had, and I was like, I was like, I'm not going to be scared by this rumor, or not this rumor, by this. I'm just not going to be scared off. Is that whenever Christian McCaffrey is out there, he's the best player on the team.
DJ Moore has entered the chat.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, he has. I mean, like he's in that, but you know what? He's got to get more touchdowns. And that's not all on him.
Right.
And if you really wanted to ask me what Baker, I hope, brings to this, I think this was an earlier question on the show, is like, what do you think Baker brings to this team? Is hopefully it's some red zone prowess. Is that really, it feels like it has been 8 years since where I feel like, I mean, maybe not 8, maybe 6 years where I feel good inside in the red zone. Like it just always feels like we get down there. And then we're kicking field goals. Sometimes it's because I think our receivers are too small. Sometimes it's just these different factors. But DJ Moore will not be celebrated as a top receiver until he gets 8 to 12 touchdowns. And then you'll really respect what he's actually doing out there.
I saw somebody say this on Twitter, and I will echo this sentiment. Even if it hurts the feelings of Sideshow Robbie, I would, in the red zone specifically, give the guy who was on a national championship team who showed this multiple times while Joe Burrow was his quarterback a chance in the red zone on a fade route. Yeah. Because that 50-50 jump, he's probably going to win it 65% of the time.
And that's what you drafted him for.
Yes.
That's not what Robbie Anderson's supposed to be.
And by the way, TMJ also runs a 4.4. We're not talking about Kelvin Benjamin here. TMJ can get up. Like he can get upfield fast, and you're starting to see that from training camp. So look, especially getting back to Baker, he has no reason to not be successful unless Matt Rule just mismanages this offensive line all to hell and just continues to play Michael Jordan and Pat Elflein when we have better options. Outside of that, there's no reason for this to not be a better team from top to bottom. I'm not even worried about losing Hassan Reddick on defense as much as I was. Like, I think we have young guys. I agree with what you said. Put YGM at that wide 9 and let him live, man. Put Derek Brown and Davion Nixon in the middle.
Who I think is going to have a monster year. I think Davion Nixon. Did you see him coming into camp?
Oh, dude, he's like Brawley, man.
Freaking
he's
yoked.
Insane.
Yes,
he's a beast. That to me, that's my breakout player for us this year. I think the potential of him next to Derek Brown, that could be nightmare fuel for a long time to come. We have a very young team, and it's like, man, if we're just able to capitalize on this window of young superstars, and maybe one day soon get Matt Corral on that rookie contract. Man, I'm telling you, that's a better recipe for success than Carolina has had in a very long time. So
I want to say something really quick because somebody just mentioned Amari Barno in the chat. He is a very intriguing player to me. And the reason both he and the two players that I'm looking for that I can't wait until preseason to see is because somebody has said that Rashad from PNP called Brandon Smith discount Micah Parsons. Like I'm very interested to see if that turns out to be the case, especially at the middle position. But the Amari Barno situation, he reminds me so much of Max Crosby from the Raiders. Like size, just length, athleticism, and I wonder if he turns out to put a guy like YGM on notice. You know I haven't really heard of him doing anything in camp so far. I don't even know if he'll make this team, but I'm just very interested to see his development.
I think maybe CK brought this up on our show. Can you remember a preseason that is this kind of exciting for us to learn? Like, is to see some of these players and what they might be. I think
this many battles. Yeah.
Tony, you know why it's so exciting? But you know why it's so exciting?
Baker. Nah, it makes it. You know, it's hopefully though is I hope it's Matt Corral that makes it exciting. Is I'm of the guy that I don't want to see a lot of. If Baker is the dude, I don't even really care if he starts that much in the preseason. And
yeah, me too.
Do we really?
Yeah.
Do we even need to Darnold that much, other than maybe showcase him for some trade bait potentially? But is he really gonna do all of that much? But I'm interested in like seeing what Barno can do, what this Brandon Smith can do. And one of the other things is how awesome is that I feel like what was that guy's name? Cade Mays.
He's a
it's like we thought like after the draft, everybody that is into offensive linemen are like, this is a great pick. They're like all celebrating this. I ain't heard this dude's. I forgot he was on the team. I ain't heard his name one time. So I'd be interested. Are these guys going to do anything that make you? There's a lot of the young players on this team. Man, the Rambo kid or whatever. Like, what are we going to get to see some of these dudes? And I can't remember a preseason where I was more interested in it as a Panther fan than this one in a long time.
Yeah, good point.
But I don't think we're ever going to see Deontay Brown. I was so excited for him last year based off of his film at Alabama. And I think that's probably another guy we're never going to get to see play meaningful football, which is a shame.
He is. Hey, you know what? I was on that train with you, Cody, and I still kind of am. But have you seen him in camp? And he's big.
That's the thing. I really don't see much of anything from him.
I've seen some pictures of him, or excuse me, some small clips of him. And I think his biggest thing is going to be controlling where he comes in weight-wise. Right. Like, he is huge, man. And trust me, I get it. Like, I think that, you know, a guy like that, like he has championship pedigree, obviously, coming from, you know, Alabama. But, man, at the NFL level, man, conditioning is just so much different. The game is so much faster. But I would like to just see him get more opportunity because he did have, you know, some meaningful snaps in preseason last year beside Brady Christensen, you know, at right tackle.
And he looked good, too.
Like, I know there's not a lot of spots on the problem with the NFL rosters is not a lot of spots on the roster. But, hey, man, that doesn't sound awful to have in a goal line package.
Yeah, I'm telling you, man.
But anyway, man, I appreciate you guys coming through here, man. I want to, you know, just thank the chat again, man. Give some shout outs to some of the guys I see in the chat. Why Big Jordan? I've been watching a lot of your videos lately, man. Thanks so much for the content that you do. JD54, shout out to you, man. I always see you in the chat. Panther Pickle, a favorite of Panther Nation all across the board. So is Matt Knows Nothing, Big Willie Style. What's up? I appreciate all you guys, man. But any parting shots from you guys, man?
I mean, hey, hit the like and subscribe for my man John, man. You know, pleasure being back 100%. On here with you, man. This we're excited, and you know what? At some point this season, we're gonna have to get together and talk some Clemson football.
Yes.
I think as well, man. I think so. We need to do that at some point.
Yeah. Well, we've been trying to court you back to C3, man. So look, I'm glad you're back on the mic. You got the pipes. You and CK together are just a tandem of You guys got golden pipes, man. When it comes to this stuff, you guys are built for this. You're built for radio, CK.
Nice.
Yeah, no, for sure. I'm glad to have John back here, man. It's always nice. But here's my thing. You know, I want to say right now, if by the weekend we don't have at least some answers, we riot.
I'm right there with you, bro.
Fan Fest is going to be fun. Fan Fest will be fun, man. I want to thank you for having me on. Just one more time, thank you for having me on. Check out our work at the C3 Panthers podcast. We're on Tuesday nights, Friday nights, post-game show, and we love to talk, even like on impromptu. So call us up, bro. We're ready to get on this football thing. Life is better talking football than it is anything else.
Absolutely, man. Well, thank y'all so much for tapping in with me this evening, man. Thank you for the C3 Panther podcast, the longest running Panther podcast out there, man. Make sure you like and subscribe to their channel. Make sure you like and subscribe to the One Carolina channel. You see the shirt 6 Mayfield, OneCarolinaShop.com. I got all kind of merch over there, man. Let's get it going. And more importantly than anything else, keep pounding.
Wake up in the morning, I'm focused in on what really matters. And these rappers still chatter as if it even matters. Stack money like books, I'm on my next chapter. Cause at the end of the day, what are you really after? 5% of my salary goes to charity. I'm engaged to success. Who'da known it would marry me?